Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is a washed-up, divorced, recovering alcoholic and drug addict who tries to balance being a single father and being a middle-aged musician living under the poverty line in East Vancouver. That's exactly how musician Francis Baptiste introduces himself on his website. Baptiste released his first album in 2022, featuring songs sung in his native language, Nasilksan, the endangered language of the Sioux people. His third full-length album, Lived Experience in East Vancouver, was released on October 24th, 2025. Francis, great to have you with us, and congrats on the release of the new album.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm very excited about it, and I'm super proud about the album and about everything. You know, everything in life is going really good right now, and it's been a very busy year leading up to this album, releasing singles and touring and doing press stuff and talking to wonderful people like yourself.
Well, we're going to get into it all. Like I mentioned to you before we started rolling, I was a little undecided on whether to describe you that way in the introduction, but it's the first thing, you know, most people would see when they visit your website. Why do you introduce yourself that way?
It's funny, like it's always kind of like, I always try to aim to be as candid and as open and honest and vulnerable as I possibly can be. I think vulnerability is such an important quality in art, and for artists to have to truthfully convey their story and their message. And that's really kind of all I try to bring with my art, is to create some relatability for other people who have had similar struggles as myself, whether you're an addict, whether you've struggled with alcohol or drug addiction, or whether you've been, you know, a single father or a single parent. It can be very difficult, and living in an expensive city, living far away from my community, the Osirius Indian Band in South Okanagan. All of these struggles, I think, make me more human and hopefully make me relatable to anyone else who's had any of these individual struggles themselves. And hopefully introducing myself in such a way kind of serves as a flag for people to be like, oh, he's also gone through that. Maybe I should listen to his music and maybe we can connect in some way or find something relatable. And the whole idea with this is, you know, trying to not feel so alone in the world. And the only way to really make those connections is to be vulnerable. Of course, like I say it very harshly in the bio, so it is a little kind of tongue-in-cheek. I think it takes people aback a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it is kind of funny hearing it come out of somebody else's mouth instead of my own. It's like, oh yeah, it does sound kind of harsh, does it? But I mean, that's the truth, the reality that I've been living the last decade. And things are going pretty good now. I gotta say, like, being vulnerable and being open and introducing myself in that kind of way definitely comes with also the acknowledgement that I'm constantly working on myself and constantly trying to improve my life for myself and for my son, who is 9 years old and lives with me in East Vancouver. And, you know, obviously my music career as well, and everything. So it's just best to be brutally honest, I find, and to acknowledge your shortcomings and hopefully work on them.
Well, I think it's effective. Like I said, it was a difficult decision for me to read it, but you know, I've only spoken with you once before, and afterwards I was like, well, this guy, he's not holding anything back. And speaking of some of that, you know, some of the press material leading up to the new album, titled Lived Experience in East Vancouver, which is out now, mentions how you made it a priority to deal with your addiction head on this year.
Yes.
I guess what led to that decision?
I just feel like I came to a point in my life where I had to be honest with myself and acknowledge that it was holding me back in each pillar of my life, whether it was musically or with my son or with my partner, Brittany, or with my work. I work for a men's health organization in the downtown East Side called the Dues Club Society. And there was part of me that would kind of feel almost hypocritical. You're helping men in the downtown East Side, you're helping people with their wellness, and at the same time, you're struggling with your own wellness. And the same thing with the music and the fatherhood and everything. Like, there's a point where you're like, okay, if I'm going to excel at any of these things, if I'm going to move forward with any of these things, I need to take a moment and address my own personal issues. And the only way I really know how to do that is through music. You know, like I grew up surrounded by a lot of addiction on the East Indian Band Reservation. I mean, you know, it's a wonderful place full of wonderful people. But I mean, like, I'm 41 years old now, and when I was young, you know, me and my bros, we were all drinkers, and we all did a lot of drugs and got into a lot of trouble. And coming up that way, I think I was never really taught how to properly process emotions and how to properly deal with life struggles. I always fell back on alcohol or fell back on drugs, and used that to kind of get through whatever struggles I was going through at the time. And now, as an adult, as a 41-year-old adult with a child and everything, finally learning how to do it without substances and without alcohol. And it's definitely been a challenge, you know, like, but it's something that I needed to face, and something that I feel like I've kind of overcome. Yeah. I mean, anyone has experience in addictions knows that, like, saying that you're cured is, you know, kind of a red flag, kind of a dangerous thing to say, because it's a lifelong struggle and it's a daily battle. But, you know, I feel very proud of myself and the album and the place that I'm in and the place I'm in with my family and all the wonderful work that we're doing with the Dudes Club Society here in Vancouver.
And definitely going to talk about the Dudes Club a little later in the show. Wanted to talk about some of the songs on the albums. You released 3 singles in the lead up. Aspirin for the Soul, which was kind of a folk rocker. But the last one, Locked In for Life, reminded me of a 90s Green Day song, kind of. Can you tell us a bit about the songs you've released and what people can expect with the album?
Yeah, Locked In for Life is the latest single, the 3rd single leading up to the single. And it's funny that you say that you mentioned Green Day. I played a show in Penticton recently, and one of the audience members came up to me afterwards and said, "You're like Indigenous Green Day, man." I was like, that's such an awesome compliment, I guess, with my singing style. And it's very like upbeat, up-tempo rock. But I really enjoyed the music video for that one. We filmed it on Granville Island, and I used to busk for my livelihood. Like, there was a couple years where I didn't have employment after the pandemic, and me and my son were living alone in East Vancouver, and the only way I could kind of make ends meet and not get us evicted was busking on Granville Island. And so I would go down there every day with my guitar and bus down there. And I'd bus in the summer times. I'd bus with my son and drop him off at a day camp at the Kaimount Boys and Girls Club, and then keep going on another bus to Granville Island. All this with amps and guitars on a trolley. It was very exhausting and laborious. And that's just kind of like the way that we managed to scrape by. And that was kind of one of the first years that I decided that, like, music was going to be my primary income. And it was before I worked at the Dudes Club. And the whole grind of it was kind of like what inspired the music video. And the music video is just kind of me reliving those days, a day in the life of a Vancouver busker. And it really kind of brought me back to that time. It was a very stressful time. Like, it's a happy memory, but being an artist in Vancouver can be very tricky. You know, it's a very expensive city, and we don't make a lot of money. If it weren't for wonderful organizations like First Peoples Cultural Council, who helped fund my latest album and the album before that, then it probably wouldn't even really be possible to make this art and get it out there. But yeah, Locked In for Life is very much about the struggles of getting by in a city that gets more expensive every year, and with the cost of living going up every year. So that struggle of kind of living near the poverty line in East Vancouver is what that song's about.
Yeah, the press material mentioned because of the horns, it sounds like ska, and I was like, nah, man, ska sucks. That's Green Day right there, the good Green Day. Much more to talk about here, Francis. So we just have to step aside for a quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here with Francis Baptiste. Stick around. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is musician Francis Baptiste, whose latest album, Lived Experience in East Vancouver, is out now and just a few days old. Francis, I guess, what are you hoping that people take away from the new album?
You know, one of my goals with this album was to kind of try to break down the stigma around addiction. You know, I work in the downtown east side. I'm surrounded by people who are in various degrees of recovery all the time. And as I mentioned before, I've struggled with addiction my whole life. And one of the things that kind of makes it harder is the lack of empathy that a lot of addicts face. There's all these kind of preconceptions that if you're an addict, if you're addicted to drugs or alcohol, that you're just a lazier person, or you're just a weaker-willed individual, that like you don't have that fight in you. But a lot of the struggle that us addicts face it's beneath the surface. It's like an invisible struggle that you have every day. You know, I've had people confront me many times in the past and say, like, you know what, I just don't see the effort. I just don't see you trying. And because all of the effort and all that struggle, it's all happening in your mind underneath. Like if you're an addict walking through your day, walking through your week, you're surrounded by triggers. And what we call in addiction recovery triggers is anything that you see in your day that makes you think about using or makes you think about drinking. It might be people laughing on a patio, or it might be the hockey game on the TV, or it might be something stressful that happened at work. Like addicts have all these little things. Some of them are good, like positive memories. Some of them are negative memories. They might be like, oh, it's my friend's birthday, so I should go party, right? I should celebrate. Or the Canucks won tonight, so let's have a couple drinks. Or my boss yelled at me, so I'm gonna get angry and drunk about it. Like all of these things that are just, I guess, normal life for other non-addicts, are a source of constant struggle and constant self-loathing for addicts. And so you're suffering in silence underneath the surface. And when you relapse, people just assume that like, oh, like he just loves to party. But I think people fail to realize that like addicts are aware that they're messing up when they mess up. And it's not like I choose to have a party night instead of having a good night. Like I was always aware I was doing the wrong thing every time I relapsed. And people would say like, oh, Fran only cares about himself. But that self-loathing kind of feeds into your addictive behavior. And because you don't want to be an addict. You don't want to disappoint your family. You don't want to disappoint your son. You don't want to scare your partner. But all of that kind of pressure feeds into the likeliness of relapse. And so like there's no easy solution, unfortunately. If there were, then, you know, someone would write a book and everybody who has addiction problems would just be cured tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But there is no easy solution. There's no magical remedy for addiction, which is why so many people struggle with it. And all of those discussions around addiction are kind of what I hope people think about when they listen to this album.
What do you credit with helping pull you through some of your serious struggles?
Honestly, I think it's just consistency of wanting to get better. Like a lot of people will kind of say there was a moment, there was the low point, or I hit rock bottom and then everything changed. And that's almost kind of like a Hollywood narrative of how addiction works. The truth is there's a lot of rock bottoms, and there's a lot of, it's not like just like a straight line, right? It's up and down and up and down and up and down. And it takes consistent daily work for years before things gradually start clicking, and then you get this kind of compound effect where you start to see the benefits versus the harms of it. And honestly, like, if you're out there and you're struggling, I think it's important to just keep working at it and not beat yourself up too much when you relapse. And even if you feel like everyone is attacking you, this is like a common thing that addicts feel, is because everybody who loves you and is looking out for you will sit you down for a hard conversation. And it's hard to not feel attacked in those moments. It's hard to not feel like you're letting everyone down. But you just got to kind of keep pushing through it and have faith that it's worth it in the end.
Well, I guess circling back to the music for a minute here, Francis, you know, you released your first album in 2022, not even that long ago. You're an independent artist. Like, what challenges have you faced in the industry?
There's a lot of challenges, honestly. Part of it is a lot of my challenges earlier on were kind of related to being a single parent. I mean, luckily I have a partner now who lives with me in Finn, my partner Brittany. The three of us live together in East Vancouver, and just having someone to share the parenting load with has helped immensely in my productivity with music and with my own recovery and everything. But being a single parent for many years prior to that, and being a musician, because you can't tour. I mean, like, when Finn was just a little kid, like, I can't really take him on the road, so I could only book shows in these little clusters. I'd go play like 2 shows here, 2 shows there, and always like within a drivable distance of our home. And that was kind of a restriction that we had. Also, there's just like money wise, like I mentioned that the struggles that we had financially, and making music is very expensive. I think if it weren't for amazing organizations like First Peoples Creative Culture, which funds Indigenous artists in BC, if you're from a BC Indian band, then and you're an artist, you can apply to them for a grant for them, and they'll give you like 20 grand to, whether you're a musician or a director, for whatever creative project you have. And they funded this new album, Lived Experience in East Vancouver. They also funded St. Cleep the Trickster and the first album, all 3. And without that kind of funding support, it's really like, I don't know how it would be possible, because recording studios are so expensive, professional engineers are so expensive. If you want to have a product that is like radio ready, you know, that funding is so important. So like, all my love goes out to FPCC and all the staff there and all the wonderful work they do there, and all these other amazing artists that they support who I've met over the years. Like, that kind of community that they've created is really fantastic. But without that funding, you know, I don't know how much of this music would see the light of day.
Right. Yeah, no, shout out for sure to all those organizations like that helping artists out there. Francis, going to try and squeeze in a bit more here. We just have to step aside for one last quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here on Face to Face. Stick around. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is singer-songwriter Francis Baptiste, and we're going to talk about the Dudes Club in a few minutes here. Just wanted to talk first, though, about your first album, Francis, which you did in your own language, and maybe a little on why that was such an important thing for you.
Yeah, you know, it came at a time in my life when I was very much in need of healing, of spiritual healing, cultural healing. Like, I had just separated with my son's mother, and we'd gotten divorced. And so this whole kind of life trajectory that I had mapped out for myself and planned for myself was kind of like swept out from under me. And at that time, I wasn't really playing music at all. You know, I'd bought into this kind of idea that if you're going to provide for your family, you got to find a real, more dependable job that earns more income. So I'd taken art and kind of put it on the shelf for like a decade. And my focus was being a web developer. I was at the time an e-commerce manager and making a lot more money than I make now, which I kind of miss sometimes. But honestly, I'd rather be making art. And so I was also just so heartbroken. And this idea that, like, when we first split up, we agreed to split custody of our son 50-50. And so this idea that basically my time with my son had been cut in half overnight, I was really struggling with it, and it was really tearing me up. And I needed to find something to feed my soul and to help kind of therapize me and put me on a healthy path again. And for me, the answer kept coming back to music. I was like, I got to start playing music again and writing music again. And that was always the thing that made me happiest in life. And I needed to reconnect with my family. You know, at that time I'd been living in Vancouver, in East Vancouver, for like 15 years, and going home for, you know, Christmas and not really spending a lot of time with my parents or my brothers and sisters, and not really connecting with my culture and heritage. So I started trying to learn my language, Nasilkan, and going back home more often. I went back and spent a lot of time with my mom. I lived in my brother's trailer in his backyard for a little while, and trying to reconnect with family and understand what family means to me, because the family that I had planned for myself had dissolved, basically. And now I was trying to understand, like, what does family really mean? And the answer ultimately is the Oswius Indian Band. The Oswius Indian Band is my family, my people, always will be. The land, then Inkameep, which means bottom land in our language. My father has a house there that was built at the end of the 1800s by his great-grandfather. And, you know, it started out as just a cabin, basically, a single room, and then they expanded it in the 30s and again in the 60s when his dad had children. And so, like, my family has lived on that land forever. I mean, like, the Oswius Indian Band, the Syilx people have lived there at Inkameep since time immemorial, and just kind of reconnecting with that and remembering that. And even just 2 weeks ago, I went to visit my dad. I stayed at this house, the house I grew up in, the house that he grew up in, the house that his dad grew up in, and remembering how important it is to stay in touch with that lineage. And that, like, I visited the graveyard at Inkameep. I had a cousin who passed recently who was very, very dear to me and meant so much to me. And connecting again to that theme of men's wellness, you know, he was my age, the same age as me, and could have been helped by some of the things that we do at the Dues Club. But walking around the graveyard and realizing, like, the original Francis Baptiste, my dad's dad, who I'm named after, is buried there. Someday I'll be buried there. Someday my son will be buried there. And we all have this destination, this home, kind of like a true home that I think a lot of people don't necessarily have. And when I speak to other people, they're like, I don't know where I'm going to get buried. Like, you know, people are kind of from all over, you know. And I think that's what makes people in the South Okanagan so special, is that we have a very particular piece of land that we belong to and that we're home to. And I hope that my son can understand that. And so when I was writing this first album, Sniksilk, which means family, I was kind of coming to all these realizations and thinking, how am I going to instill in my son the importance of being Indigenous, the importance of being an Okanagan man, and understanding where you come from and where your lineage comes from. And speaking of, like, my namesake, the original Francis Baptiste, being buried there, like, I went back there and played a show at my dad's house, this house that he grew up in and I grew up in, and we set up a little stage on a patio. And there's a song that I sing from this album. It's called River's End. And sometimes people write songs, you don't know what they're about. And it occurred to me that the River's End is where the creek goes into Oswius Lake, which is right by my dad's house. And that really, that song is about how life comes full circle. Eventually you can go out and do all your travels. The river's always going to end an income for me, for my family. And my grandfather, Francis Baptiste, his indigenous name was Sishulk, which means always moving. Much like the creek that he grew up next to, that I grew up next to. And people always tell me, elders in the community tell me that I'm the spitting image of him, and I have the same mannerisms and walk and talk like him. I never got to know him because he died when I was just a baby. But people always tell me, like, you're just like your grandfather, Sishulk, who was always moving. And I got to say, I really feel that, you know, I feel like there are similarities there. Like, I'm always moving, always on to the next show, the next town. And yeah, so that importance of family and connection and heritage was what that album is about. And it's something I still feel every day.
Nice. Francis, we're down to our last 30 seconds or so here, but we've been talking about the Dudes Club without talking about the Dudes Club. Can you tell us a bit about the Dudes Club and the importance of that work?
The Dudes Club Society is a men's wellness organization. We have clubs throughout BC, and we try to fill that gap in the healthcare system that there aren't a lot of places for men to go. There's a lot of women's centers. Men have this history of not talking about their health, of not wanting to go to hospitals, and having trouble opening up with each other, having trouble, like I've experienced it in my family. Sometimes it's hard to open up to other men unless you've had a couple drinks, right? So we're trying to get around that and we have a saying called leave your armor at the door, which is actually on one of my pins here. And it's about being vulnerable, which is kind of the theme of everything I do, whether it's in my music or my work, and letting your guard down and letting other people in so that we can all heal together.
Awesome work there, Francis. We hope you're coming through Winnipeg again soon so we can chat some more, because I think we could have chatted all night here, but do appreciate you taking some time for us this week. Hope your car doesn't get towed, and hope you ship about 4.5 million albums this week and knock T-Swift off the top of the charts. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much, Dennis.
That's all the time we have for this week on Face to Face. You can catch up on any episodes you may have missed by visiting our website. You can also listen to this Face to Face episode and all of our past episodes as a podcast. You can find those wherever you download your podcasts. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy McGuitch. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here in 7 days.